we say, we put two unmatching socks into the apple and use it to cover the spectrum of how unmatching socks. We float it.
Nature is an infinite sphere, of which the center is everywhere, and the circumference nowhere. Good morning. Welcome to Cross Street Chapel's Sunday service. I'm grateful for your presence here, both in person and online. I'm hoping the technology, which I think improves a little bit week by week, will carry us forward. We always find out afterwards and then seek to make some improvements, as well as improve the experience for those in person. It's a challenge, I think, carrying on a sort of double consciousness of people listening from further afield and people listening here, and to be aware one with another that we are actually a wider community than what we experience at this moment. And I suppose that's part of what Pascal's calling us to remember. The world and nature is infinite, of which we are a part, of which we're bounded by nature, and yet nature itself has no boundaries. The center is everywhere, the circumference nowhere. Bound together today at this time, for whatever reason that it has brought us, bound together through shared sorrows, shared joys, shared wisdom, and the shared silence of the divine. Whatever it is that you have sought in this space, I hope you will find it. We have, of course, as a Unitarian chapel, the lighting of our chalice. So I hope you will join with me in igniting that spark within, that inner light of divinity and conscience that guides us through those mysterious days that we encounter, with these words of Heller Wagner. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of creation, the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life. And so, with our chalice lit, you are invited to turn now towards our own tradition here at Cross Street, the recitation of our covenant, which will appear before you here in the chapel on the screen and online for those who are watching on YouTube. So please do join with me as we connect through these shared words. We gather here in sacred fellowship to witness the fullness of our lives and all life, to hold and be held, tell stories and listen, to be renewed and renew the world. We speak with care and patience. We act with gentleness and compassion. We forgive each other and ourselves. In faith that we build beloved community, we renew our covenant today. Amen. And so we've moved from the universal of Blaise Pascal, reminding us of this infinite sphere, to our own Unitarian tradition of lighting a chalice and acknowledging that fire that burns deep within our soul. We've connected one with another through both our physical community and our online community through the words of our shared covenant. And we turn now to a time of introspection and personal prayer. Give us our time at this point to set aside troubles and challenges with a commitment to make amends to a broken world whose brokenness we are a part and an element in our breaking. May we seek amends. And in our brokenness, may we have the capacity to forgive. For all the challenges that we face. We set them aside at this point, not to abandon them. We know they will be picked up when we leave these doors and turn off this website. But rather let us set them at our side and dedicate ourselves to the fullness of our being, such that we may re-enter the world renewed. Amen. And it's time now for our first hymn, In Quickening Streams by Janet Bowering.
Thank you.
Expect Chaos by Vanessa Rush Southern. I used to think life could be counted on to be stable. It was my parents' fault. They carefully engineered my world to send just that message. My evening bedtime was the same. The bag lunch my mother packed every day was basically the same. The way my father did my hair every morning was one of two very predictable styles. Every day, without fail, there was someone in queue outside school to pick me up. Things moved along with amazing certainty. A predictable life does a child good in many ways. It makes the world feel safe. It frees us up to concentrate on important things like schoolwork and figuring out who we are. Yet, I've come to see that life, unlike the routines of my childhood, is not predictable. A few weeks ago, I found myself saying something I had said many times before. When this chapter, or this snag, or this transition is over, life will begin again. My husband chimed in from the corner of the room to say, "Haven't we been saying some version of that for 5 years now?" Indeed, we both realized perhaps we'd been duped. Perhaps this is life. Perhaps change is life. Frustrations and snags are life. Maybe instead of being taught to expect stability and predictability, we should have been taught to expect chaos, or at least constant transitions and snags. We should have been told that turbulence in the air is the norm, not the exception. Keep your air sickness bags close, ladies and gentlemen. This ride will be shaky. The theologian Sharon Welch was interviewing women managers a few years back, trying to find out what approach made some more successful, gave some more professional longevity. What she found was that the women who survived and thrived in their jobs were the ones who didn't take chaos personally. The women who thrived were the ones who didn't think they had failed when things went wrong at work. Instead, they were the ones who came to work asking, "What will it be today?" and then looked around to find out what it would be. Physics tells us there is chaos in the cosmos, in every atom, in the wanderings of every electron. Why should our existence be any different? So, here in our New Life philosophy, or at least part of it, expect, watch out for, and embrace uncertainty. Dance with the madness of the cosmos, not against it. Leave your door open and your heart ready for anything. In this adult world, it may be the only way, not just to survive what is inevitable, but to thrive in the midst of it. Expect Chaos by the Reverend Vanessa Rush Southern. And so we turn now to another reading by Unitarian minister Vincent Brown Silliman, simply entitled Religion. Let religion be to us life and joy. Let it be a voice of renewing challenge to the best we have and may be. Let it be a call to generous action. Let religion be to us a dissatisfaction with things that are, which bids us serve more eagerly the true and right. Let it be the sorrow that opens for us the way of sympathy, understanding, and service to suffering humanity. Let religion be to us the wonder and lure of that which is only partly known and understood. An eye that glories in nature's majesty and beauty, and a heart that rejoices in deeds of kindness and of courage. Let religion be to us security and serenity because of its truth and beauty, and because of the enduring worth and power of the loyalties which it engenders. Let it be to us hope and purpose, and the discovering of opportunities to express our best through daily tasks. Religion, uniting us with all that is admirable in human beings everywhere, holding before our eyes a prospect of the better life for humankind, which each may help to make actual. Religion, by the Reverend Vincent Brown Silliman. I had my second vaccination yesterday, so we'll see how today goes. At present, my arm is quite sore. I was going to say I'm feeling a bit sleepy, though that's not due to the vaccination. It's due to a child whom I love very much, but who is very eager to get the day started. And this is essentially how I felt the last time after dose number 1. So I'm feeling optimistic at present. A bit distracted, perhaps, but like I said, optimistic. These little distractions, though, a sore arm, and like I say, happy morning child, paperwork, various odds and ends, bits and bobs, they actually build up, though, don't they? They add up one and another. So even in the best of times, we can find focus a bit difficult. It's a bit like if you had a nice glass of clear water and you began to fill it just a bit with sand. Suddenly, just for a bit of added measure, we stir it around, and what was nice and clear is suddenly opaque. This analogy and impression of a glass filled with sand and water swirled around. It's not my own. It's a fairly common analogy that's used to discuss particularly meditation techniques. Some see its image in the Samyutta Nikaya, sacred text within the Buddhist tradition. Others translate the 15th chapter of the Tao Te Ching to discuss the impression of having a mind that's cloudy. Whatever its provenance or its ubiquity, I hope that we might think of our time together as a chance for that stirred water to settle down a little bit. It also brings to my mind a story by Leo Tolstoy. This is one I've read here before. I've read it out and I've summarized it. It's quite long, so I've chosen to try and summarize it. And as you might expect with Tolstoy, even summarizing it still takes up quite a bit. But it's one of my favorites, so I do hope you enjoy it. It's 3 questions for those who might be familiar. So there was once a king who was known for being compassionate and caring and loving over his charge. But he wanted to be an even better and more effective king. So he sought counsel on what he considered to be 3 important questions. Who was the most important person? When was the most important time? And what was the most important action? And he felt that if he could have answers to those 3 questions, he could govern more effectively. So he brought in his advisors, and he wasn't satisfied with their answers. He brought in astrologers. He brought in all the people, all the learned people in his kingdom to come and answer these questions. Like I say, only to find himself wanting after their explanations. Well, he finally at some point recalled a hermit who lived far away, who was considered very wise, and for whom he thought they might have the answer. So he set out to see this hermit. and eventually comes to the clearing where the hermit lives, sends his companions away because he felt this was such an important opportunity. He needed to broach it alone. And when he comes across, this small house, the hermit's outside digging a garden, digging furrows. He asks these 3 questions to the hermit. Who is the most important person? When is the most important time? And what is the most important action? But the hermit doesn't respond. He just keeps digging these furrows. He finishes a row and he starts a new one. And the king, after a couple rows, asks the questions again. Who is the most important person? When is the most important time? And what is the most important action? But again, the hermit ignores him and continues with the digging. Eventually, though, the hermit, being on the older side of things, felt tired and made this sort of very well known. So the king took over, and the king began digging these furrows, and would stop every few times and ask those same questions again, and again, no response. Carried on digging the furrows. Finally, the king was getting a bit irate. And so he set down the shovel, and he said, I need these answers, and I will head off otherwise. Who is the most important person? When is the most important time? And what is the most important action? And finally, the hermit responds. He points out in the distance, and he says, look over there. And when the king turned, they saw a man running towards them, who was clutching his side. And the closer he got to them, the more clear it was that this person was injured and was bleeding heavily. And just when he got to them, he collapsed. So they took him, they rushed him into the hermit's house, laid him on the bed, tended to his wounds, gave him some water. The king watched over him through the night, changing the bandages when necessary, until exhaustion eventually took over and the king fell asleep next to the injured man. The Reverend Vanessa Rush Southern reminds us that sometimes we just need to get to this thing, or we tell ourselves that, this next thing. And when we get through that, we discover that there's another thing that we have to get through. There always seems to be a next thing, until, like she says, 5 years down the line, she realizes with her husband that they've been saying, just wait until after the next thing. This is another way, perhaps a bit more eloquent than saying that life is what happens when you're making plans. And how important is this message today, when so many of our plans have been set aside, when they've been paused, or when they've been otherwise abandoned? Rather, she encourages us to ask what today will bring. What will we encounter today? There are times when we hope we can build extensive plans and ambitions for the future, and other times when we realize those are cut short. We have to narrow our focus simply to today. So the king awakes to see this young man peering over him. And before he's able to say anything, the man begs for the king's forgiveness. This seems odd. The king's very confused. But the young man explains that many years ago, the king had killed his brother and had seized his property. Vowing revenge, this young man had sought to kill the king. And learning of his visit to the hermit and the chances that he would be alone, the man had laid in wait with the intention of attacking the king as he returned to his entourage. But the king didn't return, because if you remember, he just kept digging those furrows. And eventually, the guards discovered this young man, and they attacked him. They had understood his intentions. So this is the context that the young man finds the king, not in fury, but rather in pain. And in this context, it is surprising for the man to experience the king's response, to care for and to nurse the man through the night, which is why the man asks for forgiveness. The king, moved by these events, promises to restore the stolen property and offers a position for the young man. But also, knowing that he is needed to return to his people, the king makes out to leave. As he passes by the hermit, he asks him one more time to try and answer those questions. And this is from one translation, the full text. "Do you not see," replied the hermit, "if you had not pitied my weakness yesterday and had not dug those beds for me, but had gone your way, the man would have attacked you, and you would have repented of not having stayed with me. So the most important time was when you were digging the beds, and I was the most important person, and to do me good was your most important business. Afterwards, when the man ran to us, the most important time was when you were attending to that person. For if you had not bound up his wounds, he would have died without having made peace with you. So he was the most important person, and what you did for him was your most important business. Remember then, there is only one time that is important, now. It is the most important time because it's the only time when we have any power. The most necessary person is the one with whom you are. For no one knows whether they will ever have dealings with anyone else. And the most important affair is to do that person good, because for that purpose alone, we were sent into this life." Life is uncertain, but with a steadfast focus on the present, a gratitude for the gifts that that moment brings to us, and an awareness of the values that we give to the world, the action that we can take for one another, we will continue to live in the present with all its vibrancy and joy, and we'll soon see that our glass is clear. Amen. We now have a point of interlude, for which I'm grateful for Aaron for the music and Catherine for the photos. You now have a chance to share your joys and sorrows, your trials and your triumphs. If you want to share these publicly, please come forward and light a candle. And do take care to come after you light the candle. If you want to say a few words, come behind the lectern to speak into the microphone so that those listening and watching online might be able to hold your thoughts in their prayers. And if you're listening online, please type into the chat box and I will read them out and light a candle. And of course, if you prefer to hold your joys and your sorrows in your heart, know that your presence here is enough. So I begin with the candle because in the U.S. today is Mother's Day, and so I would like to light a candle for all the mothers and mothering figures out there, most especially Catherine, for all the care you bring to Tom and me, and my mom and Laura as well. So all the mothers I know, thank you. And I have a candle from Vicky, who is unable to be with us today, and has asked me to light a candle for those whose addictions eclipse their potential for positive change. From Alan, a candle for Dorothy Golden and her family who lost her battle with leukemia this week. From Catherine, for my sister who has brought a new puppy into their home this week.
For starting a new chapter in life, as I've just had an offer accepted for my first home yesterday. So that's exciting and whatnot, so exciting times.
For all those joys and sorrows here spoken, and those that remain silently in our hearts. Let us return now to a time of prayer. bring us into this time of now, the time of action, and the time of rest. Set aside our regrets and worries to bring us to this time called now. Not as an anxious moment to moment, but the restful suspension as one who floats along the river. Not knowing where it may lead, but placing one's trust and faith into the waters. And so we enter into a period of silence for reflection, meditation, contemplation, and personal prayer. A few notices before we conclude our service. If you're in need of pastoral care, or if you wish to participate within the service, or if you have just joined us and wish to join our mailing list, you can do so by contacting me at minister@crossstreetchapel.org.uk. We will be, of course, having our Zoom tea and coffee. Today, we're splitting the difference and making it 1:30, so quite 1 and not quite 2. We hope you're able to join us. The meeting ID is 820-2135-7758, and the passcode is CSC. If you're on our mailing list, the email announcing today's service will include the link for that service, for that Zoom social. So that's 1:30. And then finally, we're grateful for any donations that can contribute to the mission of this chapel. You can give online at Just Giving, justgiving.com/Cross Street Chapel Manchester, which is all spelled out and all one word. Or if you wish to set up a standing order, contact me. Again, the best option is by email at minister@crossstreetchapel.org.uk. Thank you. So we now turn to our closing hymn, O Source of Many Cultures, with words by the Reverend Andrew Pratt.
You brought us all together.
Thank you to Aaron for the music. Thank you to Catherine for the photos and video and IT. And thank you to Janet for greeting us this morning. And thank you to all of you for creating and sharing worship today. We close with the words of Edwin Markham. He drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. Amen. Go in peace.